Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Stories That Inspire Us podcast. My name is Janice Malillo, your host, and today, wow, we have an amazing guest on. And I want to start out by saying her creativeness, her drive to do and create something so amazing for herself is so inspiring. I want to welcome to the Stories podcast today my guest, Lisa Sharp. Lisa, welcome to the Stories podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. As I mentioned in a little bit in the opening, you have your own business, of course, Lisa Sharp Creative. And by the way, you have to see her website. It's absolutely beautiful. I love how everything is set up and organized, but you're also a blogger and you do all these different things. And the basis of your business, of course, is a digital content creation business. Can you tell us, kind of give us the backdrop first of your story? And of course, the fact that you were chronically ill and you grew this amazing business. How did that all come about for you?
Well, really blogging started kind of coincidentally. I started a blog back in like 2008 when everybody had a blog that was just something their friends and family read, back in the days of MySpace and early days of social media. And over time, I realized that other people are reading it. I started reading other people's blogs and it started growing from there. It was about 2012 that I really started monetizing it and learning more about blogging as a business. And it just kind of grew from there. And it was just the perfect fit since I am chronically ill. Working a traditional 9-to-5 job isn't really something I can do. I never know when I'm going to fill up to working, and being able to work on my own schedule allows me time to take care of myself and still get work done. And it just ended up being the perfect business for me.
And yes, I absolutely see that. And it's so amazing, again, what you have created. And you have things on your website, such as, social media, you talk about Pinterest. And it's really just all encompassing. And kind of to backtrack a tad, 2008, I remember the MySpace thing, and I remember thinking, what is this MySpace thing? So I'm glad somebody other than myself remembers that. If you don't mind sharing with us, were you working when you were initially diagnosed? Like, what was the process for you to, being hit with being chronically ill and then coming to the realization, like you said, that working a traditional 9-to-5 was kind of out of the question for you? Like, what was that process like?
I've been somewhat chronically ill my whole life. I've had asthma since I was born, moderate to severe, kind of has been different amounts at different times. And I started having some chronic pain issues and stuff even as a teenager. And I was diagnosed as an early adult. I did photography for a while. Like every job that I've done has been kind of non-traditional, partially due to being chronically ill. I'm also ADHD, which tends to be the kind of people that are entrepreneurs and want to do things for themselves. They don't work well under other people's instructions often. And so even as a teenager, I did web design for people. And then I did photography for a while. And I just kind of always knew that I wanted to do something a little bit different and on my own terms. I was even homeschooled for most of my education, which allowed me a lot of freedom, even in my education, and just never did well with fitting in a box and doing what everybody else wanted me to do.
And like I said, your website is absolutely beautiful. And what I noticed about it too was obviously the pictures. They weren't your, I don't want to say typical pictures, because there's so many great websites out there, but it's really beautifully and talentedly done in such a way. a lot of websites, of course, when you go to them, sometimes they're very difficult to navigate around, and yours is very user friendly. So when you were in the photography business, so now all this is like so much more making sense, of course. What was one thing that stood out to you as far as, when you're taking a picture of something? I always like hearing the creative end. Like, what sparks your interest? Like, maybe it's a theme that you're working on. Like, what is the process for you when you're going to take a picture of something that maybe you need for your website, or maybe for a client's website?
Honestly, I, being ADHD, tend to just fly by whatever feels right at the moment. Um, I've always been into art. I oil painted when I was a kid, and I just, when it comes to like a business or a blog, I want to look at things being cohesive, branding that the person's using. The photography from each of my different blogs will look different depending on what the target audience is and the niche. One of my blogs is very vintage focused, so a lot of the props are vintage dishes that I collect, and one of them is Christmas, so there's usually a Christmas tree or Christmas lights in the picture. So just trying to make everything cohesive and make sense and have a purpose, and not just throwing up pictures for no reason, but for art and cohesiveness sake, and to add to whatever I'm creating. Recipes, it's nice to see what the recipe is supposed to look like. A lot of people are very visual and want to know, well, what's it supposed to look like when it's done? Did I do it correctly? And even like on my site, Lisa Sharp Creative, where I'm talking more about blogging, and the pictures aren't necessarily going to show you what the end product is, because something you're creating, it still draws you in and keeps your interest, and is something pleasing to look at while you're reading text, and helps break up all the text, and still serves a purpose.
Wow, it still serves a purpose. I love that. And one thing that you said, it makes sense for it to make sense and have a purpose. So I'm really interested to know, based on that, what do you think is your favorite social media platform? I think I could guess it and be pretty accurate, but I would love to hear it from you.
Probably Pinterest.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Uh,
What do you love about Pinterest? Is it like you said, the visual cohesiveness? And
yeah, it's the visual aspect of it. I've always been a very visual person. I have some learning disabilities that lend towards being more visual, and so I like seeing things from that standpoint, not just a bunch of text. I also like that Pinterest is social, but it doesn't get into some of the drama as much. It is just people sharing things they love, and so it's a happier social media platform than a lot of them.
yes, and it's so interesting that you said that, because I mean, I've had my Pinterest account for probably a year, but I really haven't started doing anything with it until this past July 17th. And that was one thing that I agree with you on. It's really people showing what they are interested in, what they love about Pinterest, whether it's of course, we're both in business, whether it's a virtual assistant, a podcast, VA, or what you do in your line of work. Excuse me. Now I know that Pinterest just came out with this thing called Shuffles, and I got on the wait list, and now I'm into Shuffles. Can you explain a little bit more about that? You would be the expert to ask about that. What do you like about Shuffles?
I feel like Shuffles is kind of more like Pinterest was in the very beginning, where people were not really using it for a business yet, and we were just sharing images from around the internet, and our Pinterest boards ended up basically being mood boards, which is what Shuffles is. You're creating mood boards, pulling from pins and images you've saved, And so it kind of gets back to, pre-internet days of making collages, and it's still that aspect of sharing your interests and loves with other people and finding people that you connect with. And through their passion for things, you find new and interesting things that you might like, new recipes to try, fashion that you want to try out. Even I've seen a lot of people doing mood boards of musicians that they like, so you can even find music that you're interested in. It's a fun creative space, and another social media type aspect that is focused on positivity and not drama and the latest news. And it's another place where you can kind of escape some of that and just see good, happy things.
Yeah. Thank you so much for explaining that, because I was kind of fooling around with that this morning. I'm like, not really sure if I understand the shuffles thing. So I got to figure it out. And of course, before I came on live, I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to ask her this question. So thank you so much. I just want to take a sidebar for a moment and welcome all of our listeners currently on the Wisdom audio app. I see some familiar names on. So thank you so much for being here today. At some point, we may take a guest if they would like to join in the conversation, but we'll see how much time we have left as Lisa and I have this amazing conversation. Lisa, when a client comes to you and they are not sure about which social media platform to be on, this is your, of course, expertise. What is the best advice that you can share for maybe somebody, just starting out that, wants to share their passion?
Well, there's a couple things go into it, what niche you're in, what you're trying to accomplish. Different social media apps are better for different things, but also it's important that you enjoy being on the app, because if you're going to spend a lot of time on it, you want to enjoy it, and people tend to do better on the things that they actually like. So a lot of times we want to do a little bit on everything, and sometimes it's best to start with the one that you understand and you like, and really do a lot there, get that working well for you, and then start branching out into learning some of the new things. So, you just have to look at what will work in your business, because it's not going to be the same for everybody. A lot of bloggers do really well on Instagram. I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram. I spend a lot more time on Pinterest, which a lot of bloggers are having more trouble with lately. So you just have to look at what's going to work for you, your audience, work on that. You can start learning the other platforms, try those too. You don't want to ignore them, but don't try and do a little bit of everything if you're just going to get burned out.
Those are good words of advice. Now, the blogging aspect of it, let's say somebody wants to get started in blogging. How many times per week? And I would assume it would be based on their niche, but what would your suggestion be of how many times per week that somebody should put out a blog?
That has changed a lot over the years. It used to be very important that you were consistent. You posted on certain days because people were coming directly to your blog and looking for your new content. Very few people actually just go to a website anymore. We go to social media, we follow the places that we like there, and when they post that there's something new, we follow that link. We don't search the internet the same way we used to. There's not a lot of blog readers anymore. Google Reader or whatever it was called has been gone for years, and a lot of those stumble upon apps and things. Even Reddit doesn't have quite the same feel anymore. There's not as many blogs on there. We're doing things differently now. And so it really depends on what stage you are in your blog for how often you want to be posting. If you're pretty new, you want to be getting out a lot of content in the beginning because you want Google to see that you're a site to follow. You want stuff to share with your audience on social media. So, you want to figure out what works for you, but I would say you want to get at least 2 to 3 posts a week if possible. If all you can do is one, then all you can do is one, you're going to grow a little slower. It just depends on what you can manage. For me, I don't write that many new posts these days. Most of my sites have a lot of content already. One of my sites has over 300 blog posts. So I spend more time updating my old posts to make sure they're still relevant and resharing them in different ways and using that content in new ways instead of creating new stuff. It takes a lot less time and work for me. And nobody remembers a post you wrote 3 years ago. You can reshare that. And Google wants us to be updating our content. So if you want to rank in Google search, you want your content to stay relevant and to stay up to date. And so it's important to be updating old things. So usually, if you're been blogging for a little bit, you can do a mix of new and updating. It just depends on where you are in your journey. But you want to make sure that you're keeping everything up to date, whether that's new content or updating old content. You don't want to just, I see so many people blog for a little while, lose steam, and then stop blogging for months. That's not going to grow your site. You have to be doing something, taking some active participation in your blog on a regular basis. If you want people to keep coming, if you want sites to keep showing your content, you have to actually keep your content up to date and fresh and have things that people want to read.
True that. And I would imagine, maybe if, like, as you mentioned, 2 to 3 posts per week, to maybe set aside time on your calendar to say, okay, on Wednesday between 2:30 and 3 o'clock, I'm going to create blog number 1, maybe do it for Friday and Sunday. Are there any days that are better than others? Or I would imagine, again, that it depends on your niche.
For Google, it doesn't matter day or time. Whenever you post, Google is crawling your website all the time. Doesn't really matter. It's more when you share on social media, they can matter a little bit. It depends on if the site shows things in a chronological order. Instagram, you can set yours to be chronological or not, but the default is not chronological. So even with Instagram, timing's not as important as it used to be. Facebook, you see different things from different people. Generally, morning to afternoon during the week is the best. Twitter, a lot of times you see later in the evening and night because people are looking at night. Each platform just kind of varies. Pinterest used to matter, doesn't really. They're not any chronological anymore, so timing doesn't matter that much. Typically, Pinterest isn't really showing your pins to people for months until it's gotten some age on the site, because they don't know who to show it to at first. For me, most of my Pinterest traffic is coming from pins that I pinned a couple years ago. So it doesn't really matter when, as long as you're being consistent. Just that's really the key for most platforms these days, is being consistent.
Gotcha. And would you say that SEO, and for those who don't know, search engine optimization, correct? SEO.
Yes.
That's kind of like when I hear SEO and then I hear branding, like I know what they are, but I'm like, then I don't know what they are. I don't know how to explain that. It's almost like that, like branding, I get scared. I think of colors and fonts and SEO. Does that mean I have to do hashtags, and what are the proper hashtags, and what is the proper hashtag within, like, say, being a podcast VA? Well, typically I'll go to like a hashtag generator and see what is trending. How important are those two things, not only when you're on Pinterest or Facebook, Instagram, whatever it may be, but in general, to optimize what you're doing, to share your creativity, but also to drive traffic to that particular post? Is the SEO and hashtags that important?
Well, for hashtags, that's only on some forms of social media, and it tends to change all the time. For a while, we were supposed to use them on Pinterest. Now we're not. Uh, Instagram seems to be the only place that it's consistent. Uh, I test it out every once in a while on Facebook, and I've not seen it be very beneficial. Um, Pinterest stopped really pushing for that a couple years ago, so it's not really beneficial there. What's more beneficial on pretty much every platform is making sure that somewhere in your description are the keywords that people might be searching. And you just have to put yourself in the mindset of somebody who's looking for your content. You can also, depending on the platform, Pinterest has just introduced trends to a wider audience where you can go to Pinterest and it will tell you what's trending right now. And you can look and see if any of the things that people are searching for, if that works with the content you're currently doing and you want to use those words. And with Instagram, you can look at what hashtags are currently doing really well. And Facebook, you can find what content's currently being shared. And for social media, it's more about the current trends and what people are interested in. For Google, there are things that are trendy, of course, but there tends to be more of longevity for different things that people are searching for. So you don't necessarily want to go after just trendy things. You want to think about things that people are always looking for, or seasonal things that year after year people go back and look at. And for that, you can use various tools. There's SEMrush, there's keywords everywhere. There's a bunch of different tools that you can type in a keyword and it will tell you how many people are searching, what times of the year they're looking for that content, how many people are already ranking for that. Because if you're a new site, you want to find keywords that nobody, especially very big, is already ranking. Because if you're on page 2 or 3 of Google, people aren't seeing you much because we tend to click on the things that are on the first page. So that's really the goal, is to get there. You just kind of have to remember to look at each platform a little bit differently, because if you use them all the same, it's not going to work well. They're all very different places.
And what I find interesting, obviously, about Pinterest, which I didn't really realize a couple of years ago, Pinterest is a search engine typical to, I heard it typical to Google, but obviously on a more visual basis. And it's interesting that you just mentioned trends, because I did get an email from Pinterest. And it seems like for what I've been doing, and I had no idea how I did this, I did an idea pin.
Mm-hmm.
And I had hundreds and hundreds of views. And now I've done, I don't know, about 6 or 8 idea pins, and they've been viewed over 1,000 times. So I got this email saying, oh, these are the things that are trending. And I'm like, but that's not what I did my pins on. And I thought it was related to my pins. It was related to general pins that were, people are searching for. What you said, I was trying to get that out there. I couldn't think of it. But what people are searching for.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do something on nail polish that's not really relevant to what I do. But now, now it all makes sense. So thank you so much for sharing that information. What would you say is, when you start working with a client, what is the process?
I don't work with a lot of people just for time's sake. And I have a Facebook group that I share a lot of blogging stuff in, and an email list. And so I try and largely share what the new things are to do, which can get a little overwhelming sometimes. It seems like there's always new stuff. When I shared with people the thing about that shuffles was a new thing, people are like, oh no, not another platform. but I try and break things down and make it a little easier and help people figure out which things they really should worry about. If you're not doing a whole lot with Pinterest, you probably don't need to do a whole lot with shuffles. But if Pinterest is a platform you're trying to grow, it might be something to consider. If you're mostly on social media, you don't need to worry about Google algorithm changes. But if you're writing blog posts, you need to be aware of what's happening, and trying to help people stay aware of things. A lot of people get in ruts and will just do the same thing year after year and think, I was growing once, so I should still be growing, but everything changes on the internet constantly. And you can't just keep doing the same thing. We used to be able to pin the same pin 100 times and get tons of traffic and just ask our friends to repin it and we'd get traffic. And now Pinterest is like, no, we don't want you doing that because we don't want people seeing the same pin 100 times. And a lot of bloggers got really upset when those changes happened and were like, oh, Pinterest no longer works, I'm just going to give up on it. But if you're staying up to date with things, you can change with the platforms and the internet and make it still work.
So with the changes and with being consistency and using relevant keywords, that really, for any platform, I think is the utmost importance, obviously. Wow, this has been such an amazing conversation. Again, I want to welcome everyone that's on all my listeners on the Wisdom Audio app. We have time for just one question if anyone wants to come up. Just one, time for one. Lisa, how can of course I mentioned your website, but how can our viewers and listeners get in contact with you?
Probably the easiest place is to go to my website, lisasharpcreative.com. I have contact information there. I also link to my other blogs on there if people want to see what I'm doing as a blogger. They can also email me at lisasharpcreative@gmail.com. I'm on every social media platform, usually as Lisa Sharp Creative or Lisa Sharp Create on Twitter, because they don't allow you to have as many characters. But everything is linked on my website, so that's generally the easiest place to find what you're looking for.
Wonderful. And of course, I will make sure that all of your contact information is in the show notes. Lisa, I want to thank you so much for being on the Stories That Inspire Us today. And through such adversity and challenges with your own health, you've created something so amazing for yourself that has inspired others to take actions in their own lives. And that's what Stories That Inspire Us is all about. I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much. And I hope you will definitely consider coming back at some point to the Stories podcast.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Hey, Wisdom, we're going to sign off for now. And then I'm going to, of course, do my official sign off on Facebook. Thank you again so much for being here today. And if your story's that important, that means somebody needs to hear it. Please go to my website and contact me. Would love to hear from you. Thank you so much. And we'll see you again real soon. Hey, everyone. I want to thank Lisa again so much for being here today. The struggles that different people face at different points in their lives often leads them sometimes down a slippery slope. Lisa has found a way to create such an amazing business for herself, one that she obviously loves, and really, you have to go check out her website. It's beautifully done, and I am so excited that she shared a little bit about herself and her business and all the little nuances that I just learned today. I am so inspired. My name is Janice Malillo, your host of Stories That Inspire Us. Today, I was inspired by this creative lady, Lisa. Thank you so much, and we will see you again real soon. Bye for now.